So back in the 15-year 17th nonsense, we get this.
I know what you're thinking. We did everything we could.
No, we didn't. We could have gone in there sooner.
The place was crawling with wolves. We had to wait.
And because we waited, the victims... they all died. They bled out on the floor.
They're winning, Sam. The monsters are winning.
As a result of Chuck being sealed away, that he was the only thing that was keeping monsters from taking over the world and making it into Purgatory 2 Electric Boogaloo. Why is that though? Was he lying? Or is there more to the story than is being told? And what was meant to be understood by this idea that went over people's heads? Now, I know many of you are tired of me talking about light and dark, about balance and the natural order, but this time I really don't think that the latter actually is involved with this whatsoever. Yet at the same time, I do believe that is the natural consequences of Chuck's actions. As a recap, the natural state of the supernatural universe is the mandatory existence of light and darkness at the same time. We all know this, but what if I told you that they were supposed to be operating active and co-ruling the universe together rather than one over the other? That by Chuck sealing Amara away, he preserved the greater rule of mandatory existence, but he violated the secondary aspect of it for billions of years. He removed the darkness's influence and forced a counterbalance to be created, as the scale skews slightly to the light, just enough to keep the universe from collapsing, but fundamentally making it hostile to itself. After all, Chuck and Amara are not twins, not siblings. They're instead one being split into two. Know that if you are saying, what the hell is the point of this? It's that every being supernatural has light and darkness within them, but they are heavily influenced by one over the other. When Chuck created the Archangels, they were beings of light and followed him. After that came the Leviathans, being the first beast from which all monsterkind comes from. They would have been the very first species of darkness that comes from light itself, only for Chuck to seal them away. As Chuck began to create various creatures within the universe, hellhounds arose within his creations. That had to be annihilated except for one who was saved by Lucifer. And when Chuck created humans, what sprang forth but monsters, as Eve was born in Purgatory before the rest of the angels came to being, only to come out around 10,000 years ago and begin creating monsters en masse, thus the alphas and all that. So, you see the duality here. The universe is actively trying to create a counterbalance to Chuck's massive screw-up when he locked away Amara. That begs the question, why would monsters win if Chuck was sealed away? Let me answer that with another question. Why did humans manage to win against creatures more massively powerful, faster, and deadlier than them, as the alpha vampire said?
When your kind first huddled around the fire, I was the thing in the dark.
This shows that monsters were present and intelligent, since the alphas are the ones who define their species. With these creatures around, how would humanity have been able to survive in their primitive state? Luck? Skill? Or maybe because Chuck kept his thumb on the scale, and even then is likely a side effect of having locked Amara away. This will result in the near extinction of vampires, the rise of human civilization after the fall, and human dominance over the planet becoming the most powerful species on it. But wait, I hear you say. That doesn't add up because when Amara was freed, monsters didn't suddenly become more powerful or dangerous. They seemed to get even weaker and easier to deal with. How do we account for that? But you see, here's the thing. When Amara was freed, the scales returned even-handed. But what is the one key aspect of Amara's personality? She doesn't get involved. She's a very hands-off deity, but unlike Chuck, who grew disillusioned, Amara wanted to enjoy life.
So, why not drop by another dimension? Check it out. Maybe start a new species? A family project. Sound good?
I'm fine. I am running a hot streak in craps. I like Reno. Everyone here is so not you.
Her hands-off nature was not malevolent, but in finding the joy her brother had lost so long ago. And unfortunately, such a deity can even be more dangerous than one who is hands-on. In the future, we see where Chuck is sealed away, Amara likely left Earth, going to the various universes that her brother created, thus leaving the main supernatural universe to its own devices. But influence would still remain. Without Chuck's influence to hold down the scales and rein in the impulses of the monsters, there would be massively increased infection rates, and more monsters would start to become prevalent. Werewolves and vampires would be the most numerous of them, undercutting the competition and starting to do what Eve had wanted back in the 6th year, turning every human into monsters.
Now think what the King of Hell could do with that vast untapped oil well. How powerful he'd be. Now Crowley wants to siphon off my supply and torture my children to do it. Okay, fine. I'll quit playing nice. I'll turn you all. Every soul. Mine. Let's see how hot his hell burns when everyone comes to me. He asked for it.
This would effectively cut off the flow to both heaven and hell after a brief surge. And while we don't have any information to confirm it, it is unlikely that angels and demons can possess monsters. Otherwise, Crowley would have been popping into alphas and monster heads back in the 6th year to locate purgatory. This could be due to the mutation of the soul, or because the monster aspect of the mind would be too difficult to control, or because Eve's constant connection with them and she could force them out. Either way, it wouldn't be pretty. And for those of you who are saying the military would have the tools necessary to defeat them without much issue, take into consideration that you wouldn't be able to tell who's a monster or not until they attack. And even then, they're far stronger. Could be scattered all over the place throughout the military and the military-industrial complex, and could cripple it. After all, they still have human minds and understand how the world works, making it a fallacy at best. And with the world being massively underprepared for such an event, only isolated pockets of the world will be able to survive, like England, before they get overwhelmed by the tide of monsters. Without humans around, the remaining deities would end up becoming so weak that even regular monsters could kill them. That is a frightening, plausible scenario that Chuck showed, and that isn't even the scariest part of it. The balance between light and darkness is more complicated than just two forces working in tandem. Yet, despite everything as with the implications that monsters being fully unleashed, one question has to be asked. Not whether this is a lie, not if this can be prevented. Instead, what if this was Chuck's true failsafe for the main supernatural universe if he were to lose while still bound to that world? Because we've seen the Akrita and how they turned out. A flawed creation that was able to be killed due to the death of a singular queen, due to Chuck being a lazy hack. And this situation made for a perfect solution. The greatest fear for hunters as they lose everything for doing what they thought was right, rough enough to make someone lose hope from the mere threat of it all being true.